Hey, Dave.
Andre,
Hey, how's it going, man?
hey, it's going good.
Cool. So today we're going to be carrying on with looking at the whole AKS, so deployment. Last week we ran through how to, set up a basic uh, AKS with verified modules. So what we're going to look into today is we're going to be looking into um, the components that we would need for private AKS, because that's the kind of thing that we're going to be looking towards. So in terms of the whole private AKS bit, I'm going to attempt to share my screen and I'm going to try and use Cloud Scoop. So hopefully I'm not really, this is what this whole YouTube series is about. It's like trying different technologies and seeing how it goes. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using Cloud Scoop to basically draw up a diagram. And I will talk to you guys about what private AKS is and how it works. We touched a bit slightly on a previous call, but now I'm just gonna go through this once. So 1 second, just gonna close my door.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's what we're gonna do. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a. Let me share my screen and we can go through this. Okay.
Okay.
So if I share my screen, my entire screen, and I'll share my screen too. So can you see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
So in the Microsoft documentation, they say the control plane or API server has an internal IP address as defined by the RFC standard. Now, if you're not sure what the RFC standard is basically if you think back to the basics of like infrastructure, you have your 10 address, you have your class B and class C, which are 169 and 192. Those are the kind of the address locations for private internet. They're known as the main kind of IP addresses. Everything else can be construed as public IP addresses. Don't get me wrong, you can still build private IP addresses as 11.0, whatever it is, but you might have a situation where a certain service or provider is using that 11 IP address to host a web service or something like that, for example. So you don't want to be hitting that. You want to be hitting the IP addresses designated for private internet, and that's what you should be aiming to within all environments, pretty much in 10, 192, or possibly 169. So that is the kind of thing that we're going to be looking at. Let's see. Right, I'm just checking 1 second. That's fine. So right. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at private Azure Kubernetes cluster. So in terms of they don't really have many diagrams for this essentially, but you can see over here, right? You might have a hub and spoke. So this is the kind of thing that we're going to be looking for. We're going to be using a hub and spoke, but we're also going to be using to configure the Kubernetes with VNet integration. Now, this is I think we've shown this before, but with VNet integration. So currently it's a preview feature. It's still a preview, but we have I have deployed this into production before as well. Obviously, with preview things can change, but it has worked successfully so far. So I'm hoping that Microsoft. We have seen a few kinks with the actual service. So but once it's there, it's fine. It just there are certain elements that you need to think about when actually deploying it, which we will go through later. So in regards to the API, what we're given it is quite basically, if we create a private IP, we'd have no really control of what IP it gets, right? But with VNet integration, we can choose what subnet that API can go into. So let's just go back for a second there, and let's look at the resources, right? So I'm just gonna sign into my resource. I'm gonna look at my Visual Studio subscription, and then I'm gonna look at my resources. And then I think we had a Kubernetes before, but I think we might have gotten rid of it. Let me just, yeah, we might have we ran stop in order to get rid of it. But I think I have a Kubernetes in another subscription somewhere. So let me see if I can find one. If not, we can quickly deploy it to just show you the. Not this one. Let me see. It should be somewhere here. In one of them. Let me just go a different route and go Kubernetes services. Okay, so apparently I haven't got one. So I'm just going to create one just to show you once more. I think I covered it before, but I just want to nail down the concept, with this. So just going to review and create. What did I miss? I missed node pools. We will do basic Kubernetes cluster name should be Andre and Dave. And remember, we have created this in Terraform actually, so we could actually bring up our code and deploy it in Terraform. That might be simple.
I like that idea as well. I noticed it. The version of the VM that you would be using is the workers. Looks like it's at your allocation limit. I think that's what the error message meant in the node pool section.
Yeah, exactly. So let's just bring up our Kubernetes. And then I'm just going to go into, I think that's it. Yeah, whatever. Right, so I'm just going to go terminal. Where's my terminal? Yeah, the screen's a bit small, but hopefully that's okay for you guys to see. So in terms of Terraform plan, I just want to plan it again. And again, we are using this verified module. So resource group Andre and Dave TF was not found. So why didn't we have this here? I think we changed something, right? I might have not saved it fully, or let's just have a look. So there's resource. TF. Oh yeah, this was the row assignments, the TF, wasn't it? And the other bit, if I remember. Yeah, I didn't really prepare for AKS today. I just wanted to. Yes, last time I basically went through this, but what I basically want to show. Let me just do this quickly, okay? I know I have it. I just want to do this quite quickly. So no pools. We will do, but only.
Maybe a different node size.
Yeah, let me try a different node size. Let me choose a size, and I will choose. Yeah.
Can you get away with burstables?
Probably. I'm just gonna do whatever. It's like it's not like I'm gonna. What is listen? 8 VCPs.
DAS v5, so you can't use any of the.
Yeah, it seems like I've got 0 vCPUs in this one, so it might be that I hit my limit at some point or the other. So let's just create it in. Yeah, what's not annoying is this code worked before. I don't think I changed any of it. last
Do we have
time.
to recreate that resource group first? Or does it need to be in a init?
Let's see. So with module main on AKS in data Azure. So this is what's complained about. It sees AKS resource.name. Fine. And then
I don't remember if we created that resource group manually or if we let the Terraform.
I don't
create
think
it.
we would have. Terraform would have created it anyway.
Yeah.
Resource group process. Let's see if we run. I don't think we did create it manually. I don't think we did. No way. Everything should be automatic. Everything with Terraform should be automatic. If the second you try from that value. So let's just see if we can auto approve this, because this should be. But no, we'll resolve this issue. That's fine.
So main TF is looking for that on line 1.
Yeah,
did we define it as an existing resource?
Data Azure resource.
Scroll up to the top of the TF file.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's saying that it will create this stuff. Hold on. Where am I?
See line 4. I can't see the beginning of the TF file.
Which one?
Just on the top code file.
Yeah. So this is the one. So we coded Andre and Dave.tf, and then we coded this. Yeah, if I remember correctly, I think we actually created it first. If I remember now, this is interesting, because essentially we done like last time. If I remember correctly, we did this, right? And then we did this. Or was it because we were using a different code? Oh, that's it. I remember now what happened. Basically, because we were using a different code and I was trying to demo it last time, we created this, but we didn't actually put this in line in terms of creation all together as one Terraform, which you should be doing. I was trying to show an example before. Remember, I had some code which I basically worked from last week, or 2 weeks ago, that basically we went through that code and then we just deployed it like from the Terraform, and then we copied and pasted and started to work with the verified modules. So that's where I think it just didn't sync up. So that is definitely something we need to fix. But for now, I just want to quickly run through this, because I do want to talk about the actual architecture, and that's what I got planned for today. So let me just create this resource group. Now this is very bad, but there we go. We have created, and now hopefully it will like it. Yeah, that's what we did. Sorry, let me just run this again. Oops. Should have ran. Sorry, I was meant to run plan. Let me just do this. Okay, let's do Terraform plan first.
I didn't like that.
What? No, it didn't. I pressed Control C, but it did show that there were 4 to add.
Okay.
So I just
canceled it manually.
Yeah, I just canceled it anyway. Yeah, as you can see, it's working now. That's basically what happened. I need to refactor this slightly to work with it, but that's fine. Right, so I'm just going to apply an auto approve and just create your AKS structure. So we will create the AKS resource so we can just have a look, and then from there we will talk about AKS and like how to actually work with VNet integration. So that's going to be creating in the background for us. And again, so these are the two things. So first of all, there's a bit where you create the private AKS. So you configure the private AKS first, right? But then you would, on top of it, you would add variables such as, API server VNet integration and all of that kind of good stuff. So in terms of like the Terraform code, first of all, let's have a look at what it looks like from a Terraform code perspective. So if I look for Terraform AKS in the Azure around Kubernetes cluster, you will see that you will have some arguments here. So what we are looking for is API server access profile. So what you will have here is an API server access profile block. And this API server access profile block will contain several settings. So within it, you will have if you want to set a subnet for the private cluster, which is going to be your VNet integration. You will have like what custom DNS zone you might have. You might want to see if you want private AKS to be enabled. So let's just have a look to see how we are doing. If it has deployed, or I can find, yeah. So there you go. This is the one that we've created last week but this is what I want to talk about, the API server address. This is what we're looking at. So right now it's public. Everyone can get onto this. This is not what enterprises or organizations want. You don't want to have a public API server address. You want it public for your Kubernetes clusters. So how do we resolve that? Well, that's using the API server access profile. Now with that, in the block, let me see if there's if there is some code to say server, or is it just one instance? Yeah, so you have public network access enabled, and you have a few others. So you would have something called you would have something called subnet ID. So yeah, this is it. So this is a block that we will configure. In it, we will have authorized IP ranges. If you want to set like authorized public IP ranges to be able to access this. But we are probably gonna disable complete public access, right? What we're going to have instead is we're going to have a subnet ID, something that we can connect to with Terraform. So something that we can connect to. What we're also going to build is a remote access desktop, like a VPN solution. So we will have a VPN that we go into Azure, and then from that VPN, once we're connected, we're going to be able to talk to our Kubernetes cluster instead over public.
Okay.
And you have VNet integration. The other bit, which we also need to define, is DNS. Now, DNS zone ID is what we're going to have. We're going to have, instead of when you enable a private cluster, there's a couple of things that will happen. Is that DNS zone is going to be it's going to be created for you unless you specify where that DNS zone should be. So as an example, now I'm going to try and use CloudScoop, right? So let's see. So Dave, you recommended I try to
Try the search on the top, right? And just put in AKS and see what comes up.
Right.
Or you want to do the VNet. Maybe you want to do the VNet.
Right. So we want your AKS cluster, essentially. We're gonna and how to so we have your AKS cluster, right? We have your the obvious, I've used Lucidchart before, but this is quite free for, which is all right as well. So you will have your DNS private zone. Okay, so that DNS private zone, and then let's look for subscription. So we were gonna look for subscription. So
I think you just click on it.
where's my stuff? Right. Okay, sorry. So you got your subscription. Yeah, you got your subscription, which is like where your AKS clusters may sit, right? So you have your Kubernetes, and then you have your private DNS zone. Now, if we refer to Microsoft architecture, so if I look for example, part of the cloud adoption framework, organizations may have this diagram, they may have things outed, but it's like they may have like identity, connectivity, management. What we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking into putting that DNS zone in a connectivity subscription. Okay, so what we're going to have is a connectivity subscription, which is going to be so how can you add comments to this then?
If you double click on it, I think you name it, or F2. There you go.
Right, so we're going to have connectivity. Let's see if we can move this box here. Let's go. We're going to have our let's call this what should we call it? We can call it an application
or host.
Oh yeah. So let me think of what would be a good application to do. I don't think I'm gonna be able to do this, but like some sort of YouTube, or like let's just say website. All right, website, wherever application, my personal website or something like that. I don't know. Personal website, right? So I'm just gonna have that, right? And then I'll have a Kubernetes cluster, and I'll have a DNS zone. So the DNS zone will be here. The Kubernetes service will be here, but I might also create another subscription, which might be like my management. So in the documentation, you can see that you've got your identity management and connectivity subscriptions, right? So in management, you might have another Kubernetes cluster that might be used as an agent to deploy like to your lower other Kubernetes clusters, and it might be your how can we say it? Yeah, it'll be like your DevOps agent. It'll be your DevOps self-hosted agent that you can use, and that way, that one can be configured to be public. You can configure it private. There's a little bit of workarounds to do that, and that's fine. But the idea is that you would be using that to deploy to your private connections, right? So in terms of what the structure could be, is that we might have a direct connectivity from connectivity and my personal website. So we might have a VNet peering between them. You could possibly put in some firewalls as well between them. Then if you have firewalls between them, you would need to assign routes, because the way VNets or virtual networks work in terms of traffic flow, you will have
jumped up the upper. I saw it show up there. It's above.
Right. You will have. I think you just have to click in and then double click in. Yeah. If you click here, it'll double click here. Right. Okay. So you compare this one to this one, right? So, but if you have something in the middle, if you go 1 to hop to 2 to hop to 3, you would need some sort of routing from this virtual network to basically say, hey, any traffic destined for this certain IP address, okay, I know where to send it across. So you will have your routes and you would have your firewalls there as well. So I'm just saying, for this example, we're probably going to just do like connectivity and then like a peer, with direct peer-to-peer. But then we might expand on it, and we might, I don't know, complicate it, or we might, make sure that basically make it as secure as possible, right? So that is the kind of flow that we're going to have. So we will have a virtual network here where the API server is going to fall under, so the Kubernetes API server address, we're going to have a subnet for it, right? So we're going to have a few, like, for example, if I checked my Kubernetes server right now and service, if I just looked at my Visual Studio subscription, and then I looked at my resource groups, and from here, this will be, where am I looking for? There's lots of CAF, there's a lot of other stuff. Android, no, we're looking for MC. This is what we're looking for.
Oh yeah, that's right. The internal.
Because remember, when you create an AKS cluster, you may have the Kubernetes service, but you also have another resource group main controller, which is Andre. And then over here, this is where you would have all of your backend resources to that Kubernetes service. So you will have a virtual machine scale set. Remember, we defined the node pool, the default node pool. Well, this is it. If we create additional node pools, it will be another virtual machine scale set, right?
They're all, the node pools, one per set, right? Yeah,
so one per node pool. So if we go back into, let me just open up side by side. If we look at, I don't know, so we had a look at the Kubernetes service, and then we looked at, that's your namespaces, your workloads, what am I looking for? Node pools. So you'll see that you have a node pool, right? If I create an additional node pool, a new virtual machine scale set in the background is going to be created for Kubernetes. Okay, so like we saw here, so if I create an additional one will be created. But as we can see, we also have a VNet created for that, right? So this is just one. Again, I didn't really modify this virtual network, and we will configure. But if you have a look at the subnets currently, you only have one AKS subnet, which is going to be hosting your services. Now, of course, what you want to do is you want to put in more. There will be something called service mesh, which there are lots of popular products out there that can do that for you. We'll get into that later. But in terms of what we need for our section is we do need to create a new subnet, which is going to be the API layer, right? So we're going to create a new subnet, which is going to be our API layer, and this. Sorry, let me just bring that. So, and this service is going to sit within that backend, right? Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Am I making sense, or do you want me to expand on some things?
It's good. So the node pools can be in the same subnet as the API, or the worker nodes can be in the same subnet.
Generally, you'd want to separate. Generally, you'd want to separate it because the API subnet will in order to save IP addresses, basically. Yeah, and you would want to, just separate. It needs its own subnet. Let's just say that. And when you configure it, and you want to make it as small as possible. Now, what we found when we deployed it before was that 28 is the minimum. But say, for example, you have 2 or 3 or 4 even Kubernetes services running on that same VNet. Now, if you have like 3 or 4, you're gonna need more. Because essentially what it's gonna do is it's gonna in the background it'll need more IP addresses there, and I think this is why it might still be in preview, because they're still sorting out a lot of these things in terms of what minimum. Because again, if I look at the API server VNet integration, we will see a /28 comment here. So when using bring your own VNet, which we're going to do, you must create and delegate an API service subnet to Microsoft Container Service Managed Clusters, right? So from that perspective, you're going to want to, they say the minimum supported API server subnet is 28, but always take in consideration that you may have more. And also, this is another point. An AKS cluster reserves at least 9 IPs in a subnet address space. Running out of IP addresses may prevent the API server scaling and cause an API server outage. So that's why it's generally recommended that if you have 2 or more, maybe /27, and if you have 4 more, maybe /26, and up and up and up until you actually, there comes a point when you start to think, hey, how many Kubernetes clusters should be on those VNets, so I don't see why you would design like 4, 6, or 8 on one, like maybe for some sort of redundancy, I don't know, but like if you got to think about that factor when designing it.
So you might scale out to where you have nodes that are running, that are hosting a ton of pods. In each pod has multiple instances, right? So, and potentially every one of those instances needs its own private IP.
Yeah.
So if I'm at 250, if I'm at /24, then you get what, 250 something usable.
Yeah, that's one of the things I really want to test out as well, which I don't think we did on our project, but like I would like to see what kind of like the if I build a bunch of clusters, right, and then I scale up the Kubernetes service, like say, because right now, if we look at let's go back to the MC subscription.
Yeah.
And then we look at the virtual machine scales there. So if I, for example, set it to be, sorry, not here, but like, not the node pool itself, but the Kubernetes cluster. So if I go back to the Kubernetes cluster, and say, for example, I made it a larger, well, it's a node size. So really, I don't think it'll matter, to be honest with you. But it does say, like the CIDR, it reserves a minimum amount of IP addresses. And I think that's where, you can get stuck. So I don't think even if you upgrade the Kubernetes service, like, it's not going to affect, because you pretty much use the API service background. I would like to see. We can definitely play about with it by scaling it a bit and seeing like what will happen if we deploy multiple node pools, if we do some sort of different creation than your standard creation. So that is definitely something that I would like to have a look at. This is one of the service meshes that we talked about, Istio. So you can configure it, leverage Istio. It's a service mesh solution by IBM, but it is now integrated with Microsoft Azure. And you can enable Istio, and this generally can be used as well. Some organizations deploy the enterprise version, which is like, again, you will have your own VNet address space, etc. So, but yeah, we're not gonna do that right now, because if you configure it, there's a bunch of but we're not gonna do that. I just want to focus on a private AKS bit at the moment.
Okay, so then that's like so that lets you leverage a service mesh, or Istio's implementation of a service mesh similar to the Microsoft.
Yeah,
service
so
mesh.
that like allows
Kubernetes.
Pods and containers within the Kubernetes to communicate all around. So, but what we're going to be doing is we're simply going to be creating this. We might have to enable service mesh, actually, just thinking about this. But for now, let's focus on this, and then we can, So, like, for example, if I took this API server address, and then I tried to connect. So, to connect your cluster, you would need to do this. You would need to click connect. You might want to set your subscription. I should be logged in, but no, because I have deployed, right? So let me just set the account again. And let me just grab the cluster credentials too. All right, they changed it again. They changed it. Oh, no, wait, this is Azure COI. Never mind. Sorry. Let's do this. That's why. That just no connect. Yeah, Azure COI. That's it. That's it. We want to use this. It's the same thing. So if I did kubectl get pods FNA, I can see that right now I am connected to my Kubernetes cluster, right? So I'm connected to that. So what we would want to do to disable the private AKS, I'm pretty sure you can probably do it here, but we can enable private AKS. Keep in mind that when you're configuring a cluster, and if you've enabled private cluster, but you haven't enabled private cluster with VNet integration, you're going to probably have to recreate the cluster. So just something to keep in mind. Definitely do in dev. Don't go into production. Don't do in production, please don't. So that would be something that, it's, and we've been through loads of things where we had to recreate the clusters many times. But yeah, so in terms of the actual, what we're building, let me just go back to this clouds queue. So that's what we have. We have a virtual network. We're going to have an API address in that virtual network, and we're going to have the Kubernetes cluster. We're going to make sure that we have VNet connectivity between these 2 points, right? We're going to have the VNet connectivity between these 2 points to make sure that they can access. And then we're also going to have a DNS zone that we're going to be using as this. Okay, just something quite basic. Yeah, and that's what we're going to aim to do, and then going to aim to try and connect with it. I just wanted to, and then of course, like me as let me see if I can find my end user. Is there?
Maybe just user.
Let me just see user, the person for user, right? Me as this. So yeah, I'm quite used to the drag and drop. I kind of don't like the fact that you have to click somewhere and then
and then it shows up somewhere randomly on your screen.
Yeah, exactly. So that's, but me as the user, I want to get here, right? So what I would have is a VPN solution. I'm gonna use it.
The VNet gateway. I think the first one's from that's the Azure, or that's the AWS one.
Yeah, so there's a site-to-site VPN, right? So the site-to-site is between one to the other, right? There's a client VPN as well. There,
Okay.
yeah, there are a bunch of VPNs. I'm still looking into what might be just useful to use as a demo. But let's just say we got a client VPN set up for my Azure, right? So I'm gonna, as a user, I'm gonna connect to this client VPN, and then I'm going to go into the and then over here I'm gonna be able to connect to my connectivity. It will probably have another subscription. We'll call this VPN sub, right? So over here, we're gonna communicate to connectivity. So we're gonna have another virtual network. See how complicated this straight away can go, just for a simple thing like that. Right.
Yeah, the security makes it complicated, right? But
Exactly.
basically you need a subnet that you're connecting into a VNet that's dedicated to the virtual network gateway. So you're VPNing into that, and you're setting up a peer between one of the subnets there, or the VNet there, and the personal website VNet where the cluster is running.
Exactly. So I'm just going to try and get some line connectors going here as well. So I have a line connector here. I have a line connector here. So, we're going to have our user. It's going to connect to the VPN subscription. It's going to then connect to the personal website. And then over here, we are going to, and this is how we're going to be hitting the API address. So instead of, because right now, what we're doing is, if I just take this user, copy it, paste it, what we're doing is straight away over the public internet. Public. This is for public. Public. No. Let me see if there's a internet. Let's have a look for internet.
Yeah,
there you go. So we're going over internet to connect to it, which of course is bad practice, because essentially that means a lot of people can actually try and attempt to get your service. Maybe they might not be able to because of your security settings for your identity, which should be set, but they could possibly do some denial of service attacks, so they might be able to do sort of like, spamming, or, so obviously Azure has a capability of DDoS protection, but again, would you want to be enabling it for your dev maybe subscriptions or something like that? Because your dev subscriptions, again, it could be hitting a prod subscription. So and it's quite an expensive solution as well. So This is what we're looking anyway to eliminate by implementing API VNet integration. So hopefully that makes sense for you, Dave, so far.
Yeah. So basically, like, your next step sounds like you have to get the VNet with at least 2 subnets working and associated with the AKS cluster.
Exactly.
On the private, and so it can be set up as a private cluster. But then I'm sure there's a lot of other settings that you need to get right to make it all.
We'll need to get our DNS or DNS sorted as well. So we're gonna have to somehow let our solution know about the DNS. No, hey, there's this DNS happening. For example, that I know in my private DNS that I've got this, right? So let me see, what's the connector? Right, I've got this as a, the DNS zone knows about the AKS cluster, but then we need to make sure to configure our VPN solution to work with this. And now that can be done through peering, but again, we just need to make sure that it is all there. And because we have it like through here, and through here, we're definitely gonna need routes. So it is not something which is like, click and go. It's gonna be quite a while for us to actually configure this, but I thought it was definitely a fun project that I had fun implementing, and I want to implement it in Terraform now instead of what I used before. So
Yeah.
This is my personal goal, to try and create a good standard of AKS deployment for with API server VNet integration. And then basically take it from there. There are because it is, again, as I say, it's in preview, this feature. So what I will have to do as well is enable it on my subscription. I have to actually enable the feature in my subscription, and that's quite easy to do. So I'm just gonna quickly do this through here. You might, again, it all depends on if you're provisioning your subscriptions through like Azure subscription vending machine or something like that, where your subscription will be vended, then automatically you would want to register this feature as well. For now, I'm just going to do this. Eventually, I will look into creating GitHub actions, and we're going to encompass the whole thing. We're not going to just like create this feature and that's it. We're going to create this feature with the Terraform. We're going to register it. We're going to do DevOps. We're going to eventually get the subscription. We're also almost basically making like an enterprise solution, if that makes sense. So that I don't want to just stop with implementing that, and hopefully everybody enjoys on the code. Right. Hello, Coding Complex. So how are you doing? Hopefully you're gonna enjoy this as we go through it. So let's go through what we now need to do. So in Terraform, let's just enable this as my subscription. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this.
Is that a feature thing? And is that a provider thing in Terraform? Or you just do that one time in the command line?
Exactly. So if you ever want to enable any preview features, obviously always clear with your organization what kind of whether the preview features are allowed, not allowed, etc. But like just all you do is do AZ feature, and now it's going to change the state of registering. So it takes about 10 minutes. So be mindful of that with your deployments as well. If you're doing an Azure subscription, like if you're building this feature into your AKS clusters, right, for the subscription, and like for example, you have a development, a QA, a production, subscriptions, you might want to either enable this a bit earlier before running your code to maybe upgrading the cluster from public. And this is another thing that we're going to do. We're going to make sure that we're not just going to delete and, we're not just going to go into our subscription, into our AKS cluster. We're not going to just delete and recreate. We can do, but what if it's a production service, right? You don't really want to do that. You want to upgrade it rather than deleting, because there may have been things configured specifically. Now, the ideal goal is always to be automatic, and this is where you want to be. I've seen many organizations that start off with the goal of automatic and just either the handoff hasn't been there or whatever it is, but some bits they've configured manually within the Kubernetes cluster. So what you want to do essentially is, like for production especially, just upgrade it in flight. While it's there, it's definitely configurable. So what you're going to do is you're going to change this API server address, and then it's going to become a private IP address. So that's where we're going to aim to work to. Yeah. So that's our architecture design, the sly architecture design. I need to do research in what VPN we might, because what we can do is, like, for example, if you look into Azure and I go create a resource, right? So create a resource, blah, blah, where is it? There we go. Create a resource, right? And I look for VPN. What we're going to look for. So there are a few. You can use a virtual network gateway from Microsoft. So Microsoft's virtual network gateway, and then configure your solution over there. You can use Sonic Wall. So this is like Microsoft service, or all it is in a backend is your remote desktop access, which you might have configured on your Windows server. I don't remember where you go from. I think it's like from 2008 upwards. So yeah.
For routing and remote access. I remember this.
Yeah, remote. Yeah, you may remember this, but that's all it is in the background. In fact, most of the services are actually Windows Server. They're just configured somehow in the background. Most of Azure, like it's not. This is just. So that's might look into perhaps using pfSense or OpenVPN, which might be something. I don't know. There's a ton of options that we can possibly use for. So I'll have a little bit of research into that, see what might be best. There's also like different other VPN solutions that although they may not be available here, what you can do is either create a virtual machine and then basically host it up there if you wanted to go in that way, because at the end of the day, the virtual machine, you can then have your Windows server and install your VPN access solution from there.
Yeah.
So we'll look to configure something. I'm still not sure exactly what, but that will form. Where is it? Where are we going? That'll form this bit, and then we will look to configure to create DNS zones and subscriptions and everything like that. Right. Cool. So if we look back at the Terraform, obviously we saw like last time that we got like prefixes or whatever that we may want to use, like as an AKS kind of, I know this is my module that I'm using. This is specified for AKS, and I've got all my features here that I want to enable, whether it's going to be false, true, or whatever. But this is my AKS cluster in a nutshell, right? So there will be a couple of other things that we'll be configuring as well, in terms of VNet and so we definitely need a virtual network. That's a fact. So because right now what's happening is as we create this module, if I look at the actual AKS module and I look at the main, there will be let's see, where is it? There will be if I look at the main, probably like some variables over here that tell you about the AKS cluster. Oh, is it over? I don't remember. Is it over here? Or I think it just creates a manual. It just creates it for you because you haven't like specified what it would be. So it just by default creates it for you. But we do need to configure. We need to configure that. We also would need to configure. So this is our logic. We might have to modify the logic. Depends. Let's have a look to see about the access profile that we mentioned, right? So this is the API server access profile. What it currently has is VAR.API server authorized IP ranges. and var.api server subnet ID. Did we miss something? I swear there were 3 when we looked at the code before.
3 access profiles?
Yeah. So we had the VNet integration enabled, right? So the current module doesn't have this code. So we would need to add that code in, because remember, this is a preview feature. This is not something which is absolutely out there right now. You know, you could. I'm expecting that this is going to be coming out of preview soon, but you never know with preview features. They might take a long time. Certain things have been in preview for ages, and then just the commission and never went out. So, but this, I just don't see how it can become, the next step, because this basically allows organizations to, secure their Kubernetes clusters much more.
All right. So the once you have the VNet and the subnets deployed, you'll refer to that subnet with the subnet ID here to associate this, and then enable the VNet integration, and then figure out what other settings need to be done to get that to work. All right.
Yeah. So that will be true. This will be we'll create a virtual network, and we'll create a subnet for the API access profile, and then we'll reference it with this AKS cluster. And then we also DNS as well. We will reference DNS. So the DNS zone. And then I think, and then also we will be doing this public _ network access. So we're going to set this to be false. So therefore, no public network access is going to be allowed for the Kubernetes cluster. We're essentially going to be going through that. So hopefully that helps in terms of understanding that this is not just like a small thing that you enable. Just like, it's definitely needs a lot of thought put into this, lots of communication with your network security teams to make sure that you have the appropriate VPN solution, that you have appropriate IP addresses assigned to it. There's quite a few architectural considerations that we need to make when enabling this feature. And I think from that perspective that we can kind of wrap up for today. I know we didn't do a lot of coding, but I kind of just wanted to show you guys this kind of diagram that, that we're going to kind of be implementing over the course of the next couple of, days and or the next sessions that we have during this Tuesday, which I'm finding quite a bit of fun. Hope you are as well, Dave.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So whatever I can do to help over until next week, because next Tuesday we'll go whatever you can start with on this, right?
Yeah.
This Thursday, I'm sorry, I'll be traveling this Thursday, so I'll pick up with you on Tuesday for the next stage of the Kubernetes Terraform implementation, and then I'll dive a little bit deeper in that sample. I'll troubleshoot what went wrong with my deploy. You got that to work, so I was playing around with environment variables a little bit. So I'll troubleshoot that deployment, but also I want to get it working and start experimenting with the code that's there a little bit. Actually, rather than I'm still interested in the AZD now, so I really want to look at the mechanics of how that gets deployed. Okay. How does it use the YAML file? How does it run the scripts and the bicep? So I really want to understand all that, and then I'll get into the context of using the AI chat, and that's my goal so that not this Tuesday or this Thursday coming up, but next Thursday. Sounds good.
In the meantime, I'll look into this because I don't want to spend too much time on a resource group stuff, and really we should be doing that from, I'll look into that quickly. I'm sure it was like some sort of, but yeah, I'll look a bit, because I remember correctly, it was I was demoing it, and then I created it, and then I go to reference, but I'm not actually referencing the Azure Verified Modules for creating the resource groups, and that's where it all went a bit pear-shaped, and I just forgot why I deployed.
The dependency. It has something to do with the dependency.
Yeah, I forgot about the dependencies, exactly. As I was trying to demo everything in one go, then there is but yeah, what I might do is I might just put this little diagram into the GitHub, and then we can, and then I'll sync it up, and then obviously it's not the best diagram in the world, so apologies about that.
Place to start.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's a place to start. Yeah, I think we get caught up in perfection. You're never going to be. If you wait for perfection, you never get anything done. Exactly. So I really like doing it live like this with all the flaws and mistakes.
Yeah,
this is my process. This is my jam. I'm enjoying this a lot.
Yeah, and as Dave was saying, I should whiteboard more. So I'm trying to get a bit more by using Zoom it and stuff like that in terms of presenting myself, like over here. So be gentle with me in terms of presenting this. I'm all right, but like it's fine. So we'll go through as being MCT trainer, I want to make sure that I'm presenting to you guys as well. So it's been great fun. All right, Dave. That's a wrap, really. So we will catch up with each other next Tuesday, where we will go through and we will start enabling or planning to enable the features in AKS that we discussed about. So stuff like sorry, let me just turn that off. Stuff like API server access profile, we'll be starting to put that in there. And then next week, I'll see about what VPN solution we might be able to use. Mm-hmm. That's about it.
All right.
Cool. That's a wrap. I will see you next week.
See you later, Andre.